Hi everyone, and welcome to my fictional online course, which is a throwback to when I was an English major at Rutgers and studying Shakespeare. I've watched a lot of adaptations since then, and while I've never taken a film course on Shakespeare, I would if the opportunity presented itself. So I decided to create the kind of course that I'd like to take. In this presentation, I'm going to give you an overview of my syllabus and then go into detail on the module for Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead. To give you an overview of my syllabus, here are the first 2 pages of what it looks like. There are several more pages on assignments and policies, but for the sake of this presentation, I've put the highlights in PowerPoint slides. For any of my classmates who are interested in seeing my whole syllabus, I've uploaded it to my website and put the address at the bottom of this slide. To start, as I argue in the syllabus, part of the reason Shakespeare's plays have had such longevity is that they are infinitely adaptable, both of their time and timeless in their themes. Contemporary film versions run the gamut from highly faithful productions with respect to language, time, and place, to loosely adapted stories transposed onto modern settings, sometimes with modern language and mores, to offshoots where the majority of the text does not originate with Shakespeare. This course will explore the range of these adaptations, interrogating their style, thematic emphases, and relationships to the original text of Shakespeare's plays. I've outlined 4 learning objectives for students focused on building their literary and film analysis skills, appreciation for the works of Shakespeare, and experience expressing arguments using visual storytelling tools. This is a fully online course with weekly meetings via Zoom. The weekly meetings are heavily discussion-based, so participation is mandatory. Because very little lecture will be used, there's not really a way for students to make up for a missed session by viewing it later. We'll also have asynchronous discussions via Canvas, for which my goal is to enable students to form a mutually supportive, creative, and intellectual community. In order to keep the reading for this course manageable, I've selected 5 plays and 2 film versions to go with each. Those plays are, in the order in which I'll be teaching them, Macbeth, Hamlet, Romeo and Juliet, and Henry IV Parts 1 and 2. Here's an overview of my course modules. You'll notice that for each play, I have students read the play and have 1 session devoted to discussing it, and then we have 2 sessions on film adaptations of that play. I tried to get a good mix of classic versions and more modern or divergent interpretations. So for Macbeth, for instance, I have them watch Kurosawa's Throne of Blood, which is regarded as a classic film, and which transposes the plot of Macbeth onto feudal Japan. And then I have a version that came out in 2005, starring James McAvoy, where the conflict is not over the throne of Scotland, but the ownership of a high-end restaurant. For Hamlet, I have them watch Kenneth Branagh's version, which is the only full-text film adaptation of Hamlet, and then Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead, which is an existentialist play that follows 2 throwaway characters from Hamlet as the events of the play take place. So that gives you a little idea of the kind of variety I'm trying to create here. As far as assignments go, for each week in which students are assigned to watch a film, they'll be required to post in our online forum to share their reactions and/or respond to a classmate's reactions. I don't especially care if they start a thread or respond to one, but I'm asking that they provide at least 1 substantive response of around 150 to 200 words, where they support their arguments with concrete examples from the film. For their midterm project, which is due after we've read and watched multiple versions of Macbeth and Hamlet, I ask students to choose a monologue from one of those plays and provide their own interpretation of it. They can use the original text from Shakespeare and offer a visual interpretation, or they can translate the text into a modern style. The goal is to get them to spend some time with a piece of Shakespeare's writing and think about how it can be lifted off the page and presented visually. Students can make their presentations in Animoto, Adobe Spark, or another video storytelling tool of their choosing. I chose to structure the assignment this way because I thought it suited the material and because I really enjoyed learning to use Animoto and Adobe Spark for our course, and I think students of literature and film would find these to be useful tools, especially in light of trends in scholarship around the digital humanities. For their final project, I'm asking for something a little more elaborate. I want students to select another film to view, one that we haven't watched altogether, and put it in conversation with at least 2 of the films from the required viewing. I've curated a list of options for them to choose from where there's overlap either in the play that's adapted, the film's director, or in a couple cases both, but they're free to choose another film as long as they clear it with me first. I'm asking them to write a 5 to 7 page essay. The prompt is fairly loose so that literature students and film students can tailor their essay to their interests, and it would make clear to students that they can schedule office hours with me if they need help fleshing out their ideas. Then I asked them to develop a 5 to 10 minute presentation on their paper to be shared during the last class session. Again, I encouraged them to make this a highly visual presentation, not just because of the subject matter, but also so that the students in the class who selected different films will benefit fully from the presenter's analysis. Here's my list of recommended films for the final project. Like I said, I tried to make these easy to tie in with the required viewings, but if students want to pursue another tack with their essay, they have the freedom to do that. Now, a little bit on course policies. Because synchronous classes are heavily discussion-based, attendance is mandatory, and students with more than 2 unexcused absences in the semester will begin to see a reduction in their final grade. I structured the synchronous sessions that way because I truly think the best online classes allow students to explore their ideas in real time and co-create knowledge, as we've seen time and again with our online teaching and learning class, and as is supported by the research literature on student engagement. There are obviously technology requirements because this is a fully online course. In the interest of time, though, I won't go into detail on these, but they're there in the syllabus. And here's the breakdown of the grading in the course. You'll see that attendance and participation and more formal projects are weighted equally. And now, with all that established, here's how I would present Module 7 of my course on Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead. By this point, students will have read and discussed Hamlet and viewed Kenneth Branagh's 1996 adaptation, which is highly faithful to the original text. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern is a really fun and funny and also deadly serious play where 2 minor characters from Hamlet are put at the center of the action. In Shakespeare's play, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are school friends of Hamlet's who are summoned to the castle Elsinore to help figure out what's wrong with Hamlet, why he's behaving so strangely. They have very few lines, the king and queen appear to mix them up, and it's not actually clear that they are great friends of Hamlet's. Towards the end of the play, they're put on a boat to England with Hamlet and a letter to the King of England saying that upon receipt, Hamlet should be immediately executed. Hamlet discovers the plot, alters the letter such that it's Rosencrantz and Guildenstern who are executed in England, and then in the final scene of the play, after a fatal duel and poisoning and death of many of the main characters, a messenger arrives and announces that Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead. They're such minor characters, so that announcement obviously falls fairly flat in relation to everything else that's gone on. And so with Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead, the British playwright and screenwriter Tom Stoppard took these 2 minor characters and said, what must the action of Hamlet look like from their point of view? The play was originally staged in 1966, but it wasn't brought to film until 1990. MGM bought the rights for the film in 1968, but the film was never made, apparently because it was too challenging to adapt. So that's a point of interest for our class. This is a play that doesn't necessarily translate well to film, because it relies heavily on the idea of offstage. And there is no offstage on film. So it took the original creator to adapt the play for film, and even then there's a question of how successful it was. I'm not requiring students to read Stoppard's original script for the class, but especially for those who want to do their projects on Hamlet, they're encouraged to do so. Stoppard did cut a lot out from the script in translating it to film, and what's in the original script is very funny, and it works well on the page, so it's a recommended read. In addition to having students watch the film, I've assembled some background reading for them, which I would post on Canvas. I would also share a couple of videos that are useful for background information. One is a YouTube video that situates Rosencrantz and Guildenstern within the theater of the absurd and offers some explanation of the existentialist tradition. In addition to being based on Hamlet, the play is heavily influenced by Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot, so that's useful context. I also located a video of an old interview with Gary Oldman, who plays Rosencrantz. It's about an hour long, so I wouldn't require students to watch the whole thing, but it's a detailed and thoughtful interview, and it's interesting to consider the actor's point of view. So, to sum up the pre-class activities, students will need to watch the film and post their reactions in the online forum, and they're encouraged to read or watch at least some of the background material to prepare for our synchronous class. The synchronous class itself would be mainly discussion-based because discussion, in my opinion, is one of the best forms of learning. The class is 80 minutes long, so here's how I'd plan to structure it. First, a brief overview from me and any general reactions from the class. Then I'd screen 3 video clips and put students into random breakout groups after each to discuss them. The first clip is from the opening scene of the play, where Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are flipping a coin and it lands on heads 92 times in a row. This scene sets the stage for the explorations of chance and fate that follow. I can see that I'm running over time, so I won't play it, but here are the questions I'd ask for that scene. The second clip is from a scene where Rosencrantz and Guildenstern play a game of questions as if it's a tennis match. I'll play about a minute of that scene to give you a flavor of the dialogue.
Do you want to play questions? How'd you play that?
You have to ask questions.
Statement 1, love.
Cheating.
How?
I hadn't started yet.
Statement 2, love.
Are you counting that?
What?
Are you counting that?
Foul, no repetition, 3, love, in game.
I'm not going to play if you're going to be like that.
Who's serve? Hesitation, love, 1.
Who's go?
Why?
Why not?
What for?
Foul! No synonyms. 1-all.
What in God's name is going on?
Foul, no rhetoric. 2-1.
What does it all add up to?
Can't you guess?
Are you addressing me?
Is there anyone else?
Who?
How would I know?
Why do you ask?
Are you serious?
Was that rhetoric?
No.
Statement 2, all game point.
So that gives you a bit of a sense, and then here are the questions about that scene. The third clip is a monologue in which Rosencrantz ponders what it's like to be dead in a box, and how when we imagine it, we tend to imagine it as if we're alive in a box. It's at once a comic speech and one that directly deals with the theme of death that's omnipresent in the play, even from its title. Again, I'd give students discussion questions and put them in breakout groups for this. After each of the breakout sessions, students would return to the main room to briefly share out any interesting observations that were made in their group. I wouldn't expect a full report out on everything that was said due to time. The main point is to give students the opportunity to push their understanding and learn from each other. So that's the end of my presentation. I know I've gone on a bit long, but I hope you enjoyed it. I hope I sparked some interest in the film adaptations of Shakespeare's plays, and thank you all for listening. It's been a great class.